Welcome back to season 4 of the Discover the Difference podcast with my friends from C3. Loving it, boys. We kick off each season by recapping the last season because I think it's important to look back as we charge ahead to look at some of the amazing conversations that you all had last year. Welcome back. Another season. Ready to go?
Oh, it's so exciting to be here.
I mean, I can feel it, Gabe. I can feel it. It's unbelievable.
I love being here with you too. Wayne.
Yeah, well, it's always great to sit down and chat and see, to talk about all of the different conversations you had last year. As I go through and look at all the episodes from last year, the amount of range of the different people.
A lot of diversity.
Yeah, I mean, it's across the board. And we'll start with Jen, the first person you spoke. I mean,
she's my favorite ever.
This is your favorite, right?
Yeah. This is your favorite too, right?
I mean, I'm pretty changed after this experience.
Yeah.
This is a changing experience, life-changing.
Yeah, you did well in this. You got to display your athletic abilities.
Oh yeah.
So Jen, obviously accomplished softball player, but now transitioning into the world of coaching and now, even designing her own catching equipment. You guys got to try some of that out as well. But what were your key takeaways there besides the fact that Gabe can't catch?
You know what I loved about Jen right out of the gate? I mean, obviously through Mia and then some social circles with me in the softball world, we had lots of close ties. But you walk into her facility up in Orange County, and it was like we were walking on as her podcast guest. I mean, she just right out of the gate was asking us questions, so engaging. She really has that curiosity, wanting to learn about others. It just made talking to her like the easiest thing ever.
Yeah, and what's really cool is how she really changed the brand for women in softball. And it's no longer, here's equipment that fits men and you can try to fit into women. Now this is something that really women can use.
Which that's the weird part because, I mean, you look so good in that Stormtrooper white catcher's gear. Like, I hope we're showing that. Yeah, we should be B-rolling that right now.
Let's not B-roll that, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, women's sports over the last 3 to 5 years is just, I mean, it's exploding. I mean, coming off of obviously women's basketball, I mean, beating men's basketball in viewership in the national championship is just, it's a whole new world out there. And to see, yeah, you're right. Like the gear needs to be specifically designed for different bodies.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark was on Saturday Night Live this weekend. It was awesome. I mean, Jen Schrader's kind of been like that for softball, really putting it on the map. And I think the image of it too, like you were talking about, a lot of the gear looked like built for men, and she's really brought a feminine look to it. And the girls that are getting involved in it now, it's just an exploding amount of energy that's in that sport.
Yeah, and then, so you sit down, you go to Orange County, you learn all about women's softball, and you get into gear and, the women's sports and all of that. And then you transition and you guys sit down with, from the Hogue Institute, where was it? It was...
Also in Orange County.
That's it. Doctor in the dugout. So you go from, a little bit of, the athlete side, but then you transition to more of the mental side of sports.
I don't know if you call it athletes, because he said the number one person he sees are old pickleball players.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
he said actually
is that considered athletes?
Yeah, his profession has exploded because of pickleball,
Really?
which is really interesting.
Yeah.
How orthopedics, it's a huge thing now where everybody's playing pickleball and they still think that they're in good shape, but actually not.
Have you guys played it all? Have you played pickleball?
Played limited.
A little bit.
Limited? Yeah. Are you any good at No, not your game.
I mean, it takes a little bit more practice than it looks like.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's tough.
Apparently, it's like the new thing to do as a couple.
Yeah, you guys should do it.
That would really freak our wives out.
They're already pretty scared.
Yeah, you guys spend a lot. I mean, it's kind of what you do.
We spent enough time together already. Pickleball is not needed.
Yeah, my business partner and I joke that we see each other way more than we see our families.
Oh, you do? For sure.
It's part of the way this goes. But yeah, that was obviously the transition from athlete to the orthopedic side of things, and then you transition to a completely different world and meeting with Natalie Johnson and getting into the world of DE&I and the role that she played at Google to really bring that into kind of crossover with a little bit what Jen was talking about.
I loved getting to speak with her, and we were a company where we've been asked about how much diversity we have, and I think because we're in such a diverse environment, the population is a reflection of that a little bit. But one of the things she said in that podcast, we had said where we unintentionally sometimes, like as a man, you can say something unintentionally that could be taken and offend somebody of the opposite sex. And she said something to the effect of, that's the shift, of really becoming intentional with creating an environment that doesn't do that. And that mindset shift for me was big, where I just went from not thinking I'm trying to do anything to offend anybody to, hey, how do we actually think about considering everybody else's feelings? And I just really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, she really talked about that, about intentionality, but really having awareness. And awareness is kind of the beginning of it all. Is like, how are you projecting, and how are you intending to create diversity within your organization, within your social group, within everything that you do?
Yeah, leadership today it looks very different than it did even just a few years ago, right? It's about how we can put ourselves in that true empathy of the other side of the coin, of the other person sitting across the table from you, to understand, how they're perceiving the world, and how perception is reality, and
Absolutely.
how we can get into it. And the next one up was all about leadership, right? The way Frank Shamrock and the program that he's designed is all about leadership and empowering your employees and your leaders to think differently and go about their business differently.
Do you have the B-roll with me with the headlock?
I think we do.
Okay.
Did you get hurt?
No, I took him down.
Oh, really?
It wasn't you. It was Ray that got
that's right.
Ray volunteered and asked to be put in a headlock. Actually, we have a picture of it sitting right here. But what's funny about perception versus reality is here you have one, a UFC champion, a guy that's literally a born killer, and he comes walking in with that little Pomeranian in his hand. You're just like, is this for real right now?
What was really cool about his story is he really talked about, he had a really tough childhood. And it was, it took a few mentors that really, believed in him to have him really just completely change his life around. And then he basically created this whole new space that is now super popular today.
Well, and I really love too his story about he was the guy who challenged the UFC on pay scale and brought litigation against them and really forced the UFC to step up how they were compensating their fighters, and it changed the whole game. So I mean, he has a lot of leadership skills in a variety of diverse ways that are just pretty unique that you wouldn't know unless you just sat down and had a good conversation with him.
Yeah, and I think one of the things he's done really well, which you just touched on, which was his story, right? He shares his story so well, and that's what engages everybody to want to learn from him about what takes to the next level. And someone else that you guys spoke to is sort of really honed in on the art of storytelling,
Man.
right? And coming from the world of being a Green Beret to now a playwright, that is just what a transition, but an incredible storyteller as well with Scott Mann.
Yeah, Scott was incredible. I mean, he's TEDx speaker, like you said, an ex-Green Beret, but like Frank Shamrock, I think maybe two of the best qualities of those, or one of the best qualities of those two men are how vulnerable they are. I mean, man, they are just so transparent about the struggles and the things they went through in life that have inspired them to get to where they're at. When we were sitting with Scott, it like impacts you. It affects how you are willing to speak about your own vulnerabilities to other people. And I thought that was really powerful.
Well, yeah, and he talked about his play, and I know that like inspired you and your staff to actually go check it out.
Yeah, it was, I mean, what he's done with his, his life and his career and how he's inspired others. That vulnerability when he talked, I remember when he talked about his own thoughts of suicide and how he worked through that, and how that changed so many other people that were around to hear it and listen, that have gone through their struggles, is really impactful.
Yeah, and that vulnerability kind of went right into your next episode, right? With
yeah,
Joe.
big time.
I know this was an emotional one, talking about PTSD, talking about the backside of what our troops go through from an emotional standpoint of being on the ground in these war-torn worlds and then leaving it behind. That was pretty powerful stuff.
I mean, this one still hits home. I just texted Joe yesterday, actually, on the heels of doing a firewalking event with some of Tony Robbins' ex-firewalk guys for military veterans that are dealing with PTSD to try to prevent suicide. And that's exactly what his organization, OAR, does, which is Operation Allies Refuge. And that was born because of his experience leaving Kabul, Afghanistan. And if you saw any of the movies, it was just a gut-wrenching, thing to go through. And so for the people who witnessed it to have to live on and beyond it, they need resources, and Joe, through his organizations out there, helping provide that. And it's amazing.
Yeah, you really touched on that moral conflict of you're here to do a job, and these are all people, and these are people's lives that you have to, that other people are choosing who's going to live and who's going to die, and that creates a considerable amount of trauma.
He called it moral injury. I never heard that kind of, but imagine if you're in war. What was the movie with, not Matt Damon, but who's a really badass actor?
Band of Brothers? No.
Saving Private Ryan?
It was
Forrest Gump.
It was a movie in Afghanistan where this group of Navy SEALs are sitting around and they've got 2 Afghans, and they're, and half the guys wanted to murder them and half the guys, and they really were, debating because moral injury has been focused on so much, and there's such consequences that if you do something that's considered immoral, how you get scrutinized in the public eye and put in jail and etc. It's a no-win situation for a lot of our military, active military, and then dealing with it as veterans.
Yeah, and trauma, one of the things, obviously, with my past working on the sports side, and then post that, doing a bunch of things through you guys with former military members, and hearing a lot, and just the challenges that are faced on the transition after, right? I think your next interview with Kristen, I think she dives into the power of the brain, and obviously he's done a lot of work with NFL players and former NFL players, but you see that same. It's a different world, right? They were NFL players, right? And these are our troops, but the trauma, mental trauma, physical trauma that plagues them for years after their time, and how she, kind of goes about hacking, right? What she does, that's her whole thing, is like this biohack of, how you eat, how you train, how you mentally and physically prepare your body for what's next after all that trauma. I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it was, I think her studies that she did with NFL really was eye-opening for, that has, applications to everybody. And what, the brain health is really everything. Because if your brain's not healthy, then you're physically not healthy. And there's like very simple things that you can do to create increased blood flow to your brain. So people that have had, brain traumas or brain injuries, whether it's sports or otherwise, in the military, there are significant things you can do to bring your brain healthy again. And so that was really cool to hear all those, kind of brain hacks that we all can apply ourselves.
Yeah, what was crazy about her was so she educates us on all this, right? Right after that, I'm at an event and one of our clients is there. Her husband was a sheriff, and he ran the explosives team. And so when they would set off the ordnance, he would be inside the room where the explosives were set off. And they counted that he had over 500 concussions from the repercussion of the explosions. Wow. And I'm like, oh man, have you ever had your brain scanned? And, there was the first question I asked because we just talked to her, and he's like, let me show you the before and the after. He's like, I've been through this work where they put you in 100% oxygen chambers. What's it called where they, like when you scuba dive and
Hyperbolic.
Oh, yeah.
The hyperbolic chambers, they do all this stuff, and they show his brain on the left, and it's yellow and red. It's basically dead. There's tiny little fragments of blue and green in there, and that's it. That's like the worst case scenario. And now his brain is all blue and green, and it's like almost 100% rehabilitated. And it just takes some knowledge about this stuff. I mean, there's probably so many people our age that have little micro concussions from sports and things where we weren't as educated as kids that are walking around with us that we all could be a lot healthier if we were made aware.
Especially like those that were dropped on their head when I was a kid.
Well, why'd you point to me?
He's trying to get back for you
Yeah,
at the softball.
the softball
He's
stuff,
like, come on, stay away from that.
Well, it's funny that episode was something that, and I think you guys do a really good job of this on your podcast of really diving in with experts into different topics and then making it very applicable lessons that anybody can take away from it to apply to be successful in business, or, you know, sort of unearthing their difference, right? You guys have your difference. But this next one, you know, when you guys spoke with Tez, I know there are lessons in there, but here I could not put myself on that boat. Like there's
He
no
definitely
way.
had some brain injuries.
Yeah, like there's no way I could get on that boat and row for what was it, like 70
4 months.
4 months in a row?
Really
Like,
far and long.
yeah, that, I mean, so but incredible strength, perseverance to bring awareness to some really important things.
But his was about the motivation.
Yeah.
You know, he was dealing with depression from his father's death. And then he made a conscious decision. I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to get off the couch. His roommate got him to go run and got him doing these things. And then he made the decision. He was going to dedicate this in the memory of his father. And so I think it's a good lesson that if we find the right motivation to put our energy into, you know, the human's capable of like really amazing things. I agree with you though. I can't imagine putting myself on that boat and
But
doing
that's
that.
what's so inspiring is like here he didn't consider himself this great athlete,
Right.
but he just had this mental toughness to say I can do anything,
Yeah.
and he did, and he continues to.
So if we put him in all white catching gear, do you think he could catch the ball?
In fairness, Gabe caught the last one.
Okay,
We got
you got-
one
you
where
got
he
one.
caught it.
Yeah.
I don't
The-
know. That footage was lost.
The
We've
first
looked at all
one.
I haven't seen that.
No, I have it on my phone.
I
have
didn't
it.
grow up as a
I have
baseball
it.
player, okay, guys?
Got it. Softball was your game.
No. Softball, it doesn't, it didn't convert.
Okay. What was your sport as a youth? Soccer.
Soccer, hockey.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of foot.
Well, I haven't seen you play
Yeah.
hockey yet.
Yeah.
Hockey.
We got to get out there. Wayne, you probably play hockey.
No, that took finances in that. I
Oh, okay,
was
okay.
Not, afforded, but yeah, hockey was not. I tried to play baseball, but I realized at a young age I couldn't hit the ball. But I was a hell of a teammate and a rah guy.
You should have been the
I became a
cheerleader.
coach.
Yeah.
I became a coach. That's what we did. But okay, so I think what Tez and since your episode, since you guys actually spoke with him, he went and did it again, right? He went and went.
Well,
to
this
Hawaii.
time he did Hawaii to Australia,
That's
which was really
Absolutely insane.
before it was California to Hawaii, which I think it took him 71 days.
okay.
And then he decided he's gonna, more than double that, and so he did Hawaii to Australia
That is
on a non-motorized rowboat.
12 hours a day, just rowing solo. There's nobody else with him or around him.
And he said the hardest part was the last, where he had to paddle basically around the clock for 3 days straight because of the currents as you get close to Hawaii are so strong that as he would fall asleep, boom, he'd just lose all of what he did. I mean, it was just incredible.
Yeah, I think, what we do in business, right? I think we've all felt that before.
Yeah.
Like we've been at that point where you're like, oh, I made progress.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Here I just lost 3 things and now I'm back to where I started.
Well, it's
But
like
we
the
do-
1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah, you guys know, when you started this company, right, there were moments where you're like, oh, we're going to have this amazing. And then you get a kick in, the gut and you're starting all over again.
Yeah.
It's, I think we've all faced that. It's pretty wild. And then you guys wrapped up the season, Jamie was very busy. He couldn't join you on this one. He's just so busy over here.
Yeah, luckily we had Lindsay. to
Yeah,
step
so
in.
Lindsay stepped in, which
I heard she was a champ.
yeah, maybe part of the team going forward here. But you guys, Gabe, you and Lindsay sat down with Christian, and I know, obviously he's accomplished a lot as an athlete, but his sort of business is in the cyberspace world, and he's written a book about being the smartest person in the room. I've actually spoken to Christian as well. Just an incredible knowledge for attacking a problem which is cybersecurity and bringing different perspective to that space.
Yeah, and where he what was really interesting is where he's been really successful is, teaching IT people who are not really good at connecting is on EQ. And so he said, hey, you know, we could have the smartest person in the room, but if they don't have good EQ, then they're not going to be able to get their information across to the customer. And so he really focuses on those soft skills. And that's really helped them be super successful.
And I think that, I mean, we can all learn from that, right? Yeah, you're right. IT is not known for that. And so if you could bring that, I think in the business that we're all in, which is connecting with people all day, that's like the magic sauce.
It's a Tom Sawyer effect.
Yeah,
know?
I mean, it's
not always the smartest guy out there being the most successful.
not even close, actually.
Yeah.
Look at him quote Tom Sawyer.
I mean,
Yeah, it's like I read a book or something. I just heard the stories.
I was going to say that was on Instagram or
He's,
something.
yeah, he's going to say, I've never let my schooling get in the way of my education.
Yeah. That's definitely true.
Yes, I never let a fact get in the way of telling a good story. It's good.
Luckily, Cliff Notes were made.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, all right, so season 3 in the books, we move into season 4, and I know we've joked about this for years, but if someone's just bumping into this, you know, you guys are in the insurance business now in the podcast game. How beneficial has this been, A, for you guys, but as a company too?
Yeah, you know what's funny is with Dave Albin, who's coming on the show, Firewalk Adventures, Tony Robbins, you know, fire guy. He was talking about how, is it 6 degrees of separation? With podcasts, it really shrinks down fast. That's how we met him. It's how we met Dave Sanderson. It's how we met Vaughn, who are all people that are really significant and important in our lives personally, but also the lives of C3. So I think, especially the fact that the reason we have people on is to help get their story out. And it's not about us. It's about the people that are coming onto our show.
Yep.
And how can we help get their story out there? It's just amazing to connect with these people and then to see the other connections that come through by us having an opportunity to sit down with them.
Yeah, and I think, you know, each time we have a guest on, we get inspired to be better ourselves, but we learn from, you know, from their experience and what made them special, and their difference, and that's really huge value. So obviously our listeners get that, but we really benefit from that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've always loved about your approach to all this is it's about, you know, really efficient use of your employees' time as well, right? Like they get an opportunity to have like quote unquote a guest speaker come in, you know, 10 times a year, they're getting access to these incredible people through the lens of, you know, their bosses to really also see how you interact with them. There's a lot of soft skills that you're also teaching through
100%.
this experience. And I think that, you know, if you know, running a company of your size to have all these speakers come in and speak, trying to stop all your employees to be down at one moment in time to get that experience. With this, they're able to take it wherever they go and still get that experience. I think that's really powerful.
You know, you just touched on something that made me think of Dr. Cindy McGovern, who came on, and she's First Lady of Sales, right? That's her branded name. You know, one of the things she talked about is it's not just salespeople that need to sell. It's everybody in your entire organization, and really spent a lot of time talking about curiosity. And that was the inspiration for us to create a podcast in the first place, was because a lot of salespeople come into organizations and think selling is about talking. It's really not. It's about listening and asking questions and going deep with people. And so that was part of our inspiration in wanting to create the podcast in the first place. And so it's really cool to have a lady who's, you know, not just the first lady of sales, but really somebody highly, highly successful, have the exact same philosophy.
Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, we've learned from CUENTO, who really talks about, you know, your personal brand. And your personal brand is so important because that's your reputation. That's how you connect. That's how people see you. And that's what this, you know, we're creating a platform for people to come and continue their personal brand.
You know what he's trying to do there? He's trying to get you to not B-roll the softball game.
Yeah.
That's
Otherwise,
why he's saying that.
CUENTO is fired.
Well, he's usually just renegotiating.
Yeah.
I could see Gabe like in the neighborhood. He'd be like, you know, I mean, we could talk about, you know, lowering your deal. And all these different well, so when you brought that up about the sales thing, it just reminded me. So I was in DC working on a project with a former boss of mine, and he brought up this sort of slogan that we used to have when I worked at the Miami Dolphins. It was everywhere in the front office, and I forgot all about it, but it was Todos somos vendedores. We are all sellers. And it was like, no matter where you work in the organization, I want you to think like, we're all in sales. We're all trying to drive revenue.
We should
We're all-
steal that.
It's really good. And it was like, you know what? It's so simple to, if you can, it takes people who are not in a sales role and helps them have a little empathy for those who are in a sales role. Because, yeah, like everybody wants to put a negative spin on the sales. Oh, they're out. They just sell anything and they're just, it gets dropped on our plates. Like, well, they've got their own challenges, right? And then internally, like as a marketer, it changed the way I looked at things. Like I needed to sell things to my boss. I needed to sell things to my team. Like, yeah, we are all in sales.
Yeah.
And like, how do we engage and mentally remember your business is driven on sales. My business is driven on sales. Like it was
We
pretty
all
good.
are.
Yeah.
And we're all a vendor to somebody.
I loved how you said that with a great Cuban accent.
Right?
Yeah, it was
There
pretty
you go.
good, yeah.
Man. I couldn't
like
to make sure I had it right because I was like, I don't want to say it wrong on camera. I was like,
You did
I
you did
had it.
great.
I
You
know.
did you
Yeah.
did
I
great.
mean, we're,
yeah.
we're close enough to the Mexican border. I think we can steal that, right?
Yo,
Yeah.
yeah. Listen, I mean, Cuento means story in Spanish.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's all about, connecting people and connecting the dots. And you guys have done a great job. I'm so proud. I remember when we first sat down and talked about doing a podcast, Jamie got it. And Gabe kind of looked at me with like a high eyebrow and he was
I'm like, how much is it going to cost? Yeah, there you go.
And what we shared was the benefits on the backside are so much more. And it's great to see. It's always great from a marketing standpoint when you pitch an idea. Initially, it's never successful, right? Like it's very rare that you hit one out of the park day one. Brand stuff takes time. And to now we're, 4 years into this and it's like, we're seeing the benefits of the relationships that it's building, but also the lessons and how that permeates throughout your whole organization. It's really cool to see. So
thanks
congrats.
for pushing me on that because it's definitely been inspiring. So.
You have an incredible partner who's very much like me that can just start to think out and then go, how do we believe in the opportunity and really go after it. So kudos to you guys.
I think as long as we don't have to put him in catcher's gear again, he'll be okay.
Yeah. Do not look at that video, okay?
Done. And we're going to roll it right here as we say goodbye. But thank you to you guys for the opportunity and for you guys who are listening to this and watching this podcast. It's exciting to see two business leaders really understand the value of connecting with people and sharing their stories while also sharing what's so different about what they do every day.
Thanks, Erle.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.